So we're on Roman numeral 11 of the Golden Doves, the first page of the introduction, last paragraph. Ever since 1819, Jewish scholarship has been dominated by the movement known as Wissenschaft des Judentum, or the scientific study of Judaism. The Wissenschaft des Judentum was a 19th century movement which wanted to study Judaism in scientific terms, scientifically, whatever scientifically even means, as if although you could put Judaism under a microscope and look at it, or perhaps you can find Judaism on a periodic table. I mean, these are all categories invented by Gentile thinkers. Why would these categories invented by Gentile thinkers somehow be appropriate to decode Jewish thought, right? What is the basis? I mean, if there is a basis, I'd like to hear it. But the whole idea of a scientific study, as if although there's some objective criteria, right? And these objective criteria are scientific, and this will determine, our understanding of Judaism, right? So this Wissenschaft des Judentum has been a very dominant force in the study of Judaism, especially in universities. I'm continuing now in the Golden Doves. The basic premise of this school was a belief in the objective study of humanities. Well, in order to have a scientific, quote-unquote, scientific study of Judaism, right, you first have to believe that somehow you can study the humanities, human society, human culture. You can somehow, there's an objective criteria. There are objective criteria through which to evaluate any given human society or any given human culture, and it's always going to be the same ruler. The ruler will be in inches, right? And the language we use will be in English. We'll use the English language, and we'll use the inches on a ruler to measure cultures, Hindu cultures, Tibetan cultures, right? Just like when Star Trek, doesn't matter where Star Trek goes, where the Enterprise goes in the galaxy, everybody speaks English. So that just proves that the scientific objective study of the humanities is indeed a valid way to study human society and human culture. Continuing now in the Golden Doves. So again, following German historiography, right? It was made. I just want to explain what scientific study and objective criteria. So, for example, I have a thermometer, as I said in my previous video. I can scientifically measure the temperature of any liquid, or any solid, or any gas, because I have a thermometer. We will apply this to the study of various societies, various cultures, various ethnic groups, right? That's the premise of the objective study of the humanities. And that, if you accept that premise, meaning if you accept that wherever the Starship Enterprise goes, everybody speaks English, then indeed you can have the scientific study of Judaism. Okay? Continuing in the text. Following German historiography, it was maintained that there are universal categories determining the institutions and cultural developments of man. So let me just a word about historiography. Historiography is the way in which historians describe a particular history and the way they analyze a particular history. So if we're talking about German historiography or the historiography of Germany, it would deal in the way in which historians, especially German historians, depict German history, right? How do they understand the development of German history. That's what historiography is about, or German historiography. It's not history. History is what actually happened, assuming there was an objective story. So that's history. No, historiography is how do we understand what happened? How do we structure what took place and depict it in a way where we now can reach certain conclusions about the nation, in this case Germany, that underwent those particular historical events, right? And when you're talking about German historiography, one of the most important figures in German historiography was none other than Hegel. And I want to read to you, because it's really important to understand Hegel. Because a lot of this stuff today exists among some Jewish thinkers, not all, not all, but it's there. And it's almost become like a religious dogma. Let me read to you what Hegel says, right? So he says that world history represents the development of the spirit's consciousness of its own freedom. So there's a spirit, I suppose a spirit in any nation, and that spirit becomes aware, becomes conscious of the freedom or the potential for freedom of that nation. Continuing in Hegel, and the consequent realization of this freedom. So once the spirit becomes aware of its freedom, then it actually realizes its freedom. So the potential freedom turns into an actual freedom. So what Hegel did, he applied this to different nations. So for example, he applies it to Asian countries, and he reaches a conclusion that these nations are really inferior because they never fully developed the ideas of freedom that are so important to Hegel, and oddly enough, not so important to a Tibetan monk living somewhere there in the Himalayas. Geez, who would have thought? But anyway, it's not important to them. So they're like at a very low development as a nation. And then there was the greatest nations were Germany and England, because they truly were conscious of the ideas of freedom, and they realized freedom, right? So this is a scientific study of nations, right? Where you have a particular theory, call it freedom, and you have a Western notion of freedom, obviously. And geez, Eastern nations didn't develop your Western notion of freedom. That is like so shocking. And of course, these nations therefore are inferior, right? So you see how the objective study of historiography is ludicrous, but that's what Hegel was. That's what Hegel did. And reading again, the basic premise of this school was a belief in the objective study of the humanities. I read that. Part of the study of the humanities is the study of history. So following German historiography being obsessed with the idea of the spirit realizing there is freedom, and then it becomes free, right? That's a German notion, right? So following German historiography, it was maintained that there are universal categories determining the institutions and cultural development of man, right? So one of the universal categories, as we said, is freedom, or the spirit realizing freedom. The facts that fit these categories pertain to the essential aspects of society. So we're going to be studying the development of the Tibetan monks in view of how in tune they were with Western notions of freedom, right? That's exactly what they did. And everything, our analysis, we will write doctoral theses on this very question. Now, it could be for a Tibetan monk, maybe the idea of Western freedom is completely irrelevant to him and has no place in his thinking or culture, right? This is how ludicrous it all becomes. So the facts that fit these categories pertain to the essential aspects of society. So you find something in a Tibetan monk that you can attribute to freedom, primitive though it may be. You say, aha, that's the essence of what happened to that culture, right? And the other really important things are completely marginalized. Who says so? Not the Tibetans, who actually, live their lives and breathe the air around them and are imbued with whatever mental foundations and mental attitudes. They will not determine what they're about. A German called Hegel will determine what they're about, right? So the facts that fit these categories pertain to the essential aspects of society. All other facts must be considered peripheral and unessential. So Eastern meditation and the whole attitude they have towards life and towards destiny is completely irrelevant, because that has very little to do with our notion of freedom. By the way, the tikva, the idea of the tikva, kolod baleva pnima, nefesh Yehudia homiya. So that's this inner spirit. What is the spirit looking for? Liyotam chofshi be'artzenu. So the spirit is looking to achieve freedom. I wonder whether that song itself was influenced by Hegelian notions, right? So here you see the mental assimilation. The mental assimilation, how Hegel and Hegelian ideas, Hegelian historiography, has permeated itself at some of the secular, let's just say secular thinkers of our nation. I also detected this obsession with the spirit of the Jewish nation in some of the writings of a rabbi that I have tremendous respect and love for, because I think he did great things. Harav Kook, absolutely love him, absolutely love many things he did. But I can respectfully disagree to the extent that I feel that some of his notions are themselves Hegelian, because it has this whole idea, there's the Ikar, and the Ikar is the Ummah, the nation, and the spirit of the nation. And this is their secular, vestiges, right? It's not just vestiges, but this is like not the main thing, right? So I wonder if there's some Hegelian influences there. That's why it's so important to understand Gentile thinking, because only by understanding Gentile thinking can you suddenly realize how we as a nation have been consumed by Gentile thinking. Perhaps for the Mashiach to come, perhaps we have to release ourselves from Gentile thinking and return to rabbinic thinking, to the thinking of Chachmei Gemara, to the thinking of the Geonim, to the thinking of Chachmei Andalus. And perhaps because we're not doing that, we are in a sense holding ourselves back. That's why, while this is a little difficult, and many of you say, why do I have to understand Hegel? Well, you have to understand Hegel, because if you don't, you'll never know what swallowed you.